Really, your grandfather?
On my father's side, yeah.
Dovi, perhaps it's time to start putting on Rabbeinu Tam.
Oh, why don't I save up for it?
Okay.
Yeah, how much does it cost?
First make a achlata, this is what we got to do, and then afterwards, get done.
My uncle Rabbeinu Tam.
We're already live.
Yeah.
Let's share. We're going to share the Gemara on the screen. We have an art school Gemara we are holding here on Daf Lamed Aleph on the Beis 30. Lamed Aleph on Aleph 31a. Only one more blot left to finish some Mesechta. 31a2. If you have an art scroll, pass it down.
Thank you.
31a2. Let me show you one over here. 31a. Yeah. Here you go. Okay. If you're looking at a siddur, a typical siddur, I'm just going to maybe stop the share, not the share, but stop the sharing screen for a moment just to see it more clearly. Good morning, Yossi. Shalom Aleichem.
Morning, Rabbi. Shalom Aleichem.
Okay, let me remove the background just to make this more clear. But if you look at the if you look at a siddur over here, you're going to see in the siddur these words. Let's see. This is the Kriyas HaTorah for Chol Moed Pesach, and it says over here, Siman, Torah, Kadesh Bechasba, Hershel, B'madbera Shlach Buchra. And if it first day is on Shabbos, it goes like this. Let's go see this in the Gemara. Says the Gemara. Amar Abaya says, and just to give a little context over here, it will make it just more clear what exactly you read on the first day of Pesach and the second day of Pesach according to Abaya. And this is what do you read on every single day of Pesach in Chutz La'aretz? We had the Brisa, we had Reb Papa, who say that on the second day of Pesach, you read the same exact Parshas Emor, same way you do on the first and the second day of Sukkot. And then you start going in a different order, Mem, Aleph, Pei, Vav, Mapu. And we went through those parshas yesterday. This is Abaya. This is a minute we do nowadays. We go Mashach, Torah, Kadesh, B'chaspa, Pasal, B'madbira, Shalach, Buchra. As it says, we saw here in the Siddur. This is what you read in the order that you read of all the different Kriyas Torah readings on Pesach. Let's see what they are inside. Amar Abaya says, Ve'idna nog alma. Now the custom of the diaspora is limikri throughout the days of Pesach are to read mashach. All these words are a mnemonic abbreviation to remember what every single Torah reading is. And first you read from Parshas Bay, which is Mishchu Chulachem, take for you sheep and bring in Karban Pesach. Then you read Torah, cow, ox, which is Shari Chesed, Parshas Emor, which is Shari Chesed. If you bring a Torah, an ox, Tuf and Shin. Tuf in Aramaic is Shin in Hebrew. So, and then the Aleph is extra letter you add in Aramaic. So the Shor, Chesed, Parshas Emor, which goes through all the Yom Tovim. Next one is Kadesh, back to Parshas Bay, on the third day, Chol Moed. Chasba and Kesef Talveh, which mentions Pesach in one verse. You do on Chol Moed, you do this. That's Parshas Mishpatim, which is even later. B'madbira, B'chasba Psol, Parshas Kisisa, Mishpatim Terumat Tetzaveh, Kisisa, later. B'madbira, in the desert. That's in Bamidbar Sinai in Parshas Eschanan. In Parshas B'haloischa, says the Jewish people should make the Karban Pesach in the right time. Then, fourth one is Shalach, send. On the Shliach Pesach, seventh day of Pesach, we read Parshas B'Shalach. And the last one is Buchra. Buchra means a Bechar, and you read in Parshas Chumash Dvarim, near the end of the Torah, on the last day of Pesach, we read Kol HaBechar. We read this is the parshas that you read, and this is the order. And Abaya says you go in the chronological order of the Torah, from beginning to end, from earlier parsha to a later parsha. So first we start off with Parshas Bay. We're going to make one interruption to go out of order for Parshas Emor before we go back to Parshas Bay on the first day of Chol Hamoed. And the reason we're making that interruption is because in Parshas Emor it says on the 15th day of Nisan you should make Pesach. 15th day of Nisan you should make Pesach outside of Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. Are we sure what day is the 15th? We have Sveika D'Yoma, right?
Yeah.
Now we know because of the fixed calendar, etc. But we don't. In times of the Beis Hamikdash, you wouldn't always know what day is the 15th of Adar, 15th of Nisan. So therefore, you read it on the second day of Pesach, not the first day of Pesach. Otherwise, you go in order. Once again, when it comes to Shiur Pesach, the day the Jews crossed the night the Jews crossed the Yam Suf, we go back to Parshas B'Shalach. Although we read Kisisa, etc. Chaspa Pasal B'Madra, we read those parshas which come later, right? Kisisa, Mishpatim. However, we go back to Parshas B'Shalach because this is what happened on the seventh day of Pesach. And then we read Bukhra Kol HaBechor at the end, which mentions the 15th day of Nisan. That's in Chumash Dvarim, near the end of the Torah, because we read that on the last day, but we don't read it on the seventh day because since we're Chutz La'aretz, we don't know what day is the seventh day of Pesach, and therefore you read it on the last day. So besides for Torah, the second day of Pesach, which is Yom Tiv, and Shalach, the seventh day of Pesach, which is Yom Tiv, you go read everything in the order that it's written in the Torah. That's what it means, Shalach Bukhra, Mashach Torah, etc. The Chassam Sofer has a wonderful explanation on these words. What exactly is an interesting mnemonic? So, and it's printed in the Siddur as well, as we have seen. And the Chassam Sofer and Levush, you read it related to the Levush?
Yes.
Levush, Mordechai Panek, he was one of the Poskim Rishonim. He writes, this is to remind the Jewish people to always do teshuvah. Just right now, the mnemonic is one of the first words in Aramaic of every kriya. But translate the sentence. Mashach Torah. Mashach means he took Torah, a cow, a calf, which is reminding you of the Chet HaEgel, when the Jewish people sinned. And mashku means they took away, they draw down. Under the Kisei HaKavod, one of the four faces of the Merkava, one of the four faces is the face of a shor, face of an ox. And when the Jewish people sinned, they took the face of an ox that was supposed to be Kedusha, and they took it to Klippa. And that's why it says in Mesechta Chagiga that after the Jewish people sinned with the Chet HaEgel, with the sin of the golden calf, the Pnei Hashar, Shetachas Kisei HaKavod, the ox under the Kisei HaKavod, got removed, and it became a kruv. Kruv is a cherub, a child, in order not to remind in heaven of the sin of the golden calf. And that's why in the Beis Hamikdash we had on the Aron we had kruvim, remind us of the kruvim under the Kisei HaKavod. Hashem removed the so Mashach Torah means you took away the Torah, the Pnei Hashar, from under the Merkava. Kadesh b'chaspa. Kadesh means they sanctified. B'chaspa means with money. They took the money that they had and they gave it in order to make the egel, the calf. Later on, they made for the Baal. Pasal b'madbara, he says. Tesel is a idol.
Yeah.
B'madbara, they made it in the desert. And because they made this in the desert, they were nifsalu. They invalidated all the bechoros, all the firstborn, to be the kohanim. Until then, the bechor, the firstborn of every family, was supposed to be the kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash.
Yeah.
Because of the sin of the golden calf, all the firstborns bowed to the golden calf. The only one who didn't was Shevet Levi. So Shevet Levi now became the kohanim, became sanctified. So pasal b'madbera shalach buchra. Now all the firstborns got sent away. No longer are you able to be in the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, on Pesach, they instituted this type of reading in order to remind us that we should do teshuvah and fix our deeds. Chassam Sofer writes That was the levush. Some Sefer writes that here you have hinted to all the dinim of kinyan, how you acquire something according to halacha. Mashach Torah means meshicha. When you acquire something, you can't just say this is yours. You have to do an act. So if something you could pick up, you pick up. Something you can't pick up, like a field, you have to work on it to show that you have to, or put a fence on it, show that it's yours. An ox, you can't pick it up usually unless you're, the strong man of the world. So mashach, you have to lead it. So mashach Torah means you do mashicha, you lead, you pull a ox, everything which is heavy, you have to just pull it and lead it. You lead it. A car you could drive, that's mashach. Kadesh v'chaspa. When you get married, kiddushin, you have to do it with
A ring.
kesef, money.
Yeah.
That's what we give a ring. Whenever you want to bring carbon, you have to do it with money. Pasal ben madbera. Madbera is the desert. If you want to buy a property, you can't pick it up. You can't drag it after you. But you could do it with pisul. Mispissel means you could make a change. When you're carving something, it's called pisil. You make a change in the land. So, for example, you plow it, you do something on the land. Shalach buchra. Shalach is sending out. When I want to send an Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave, to go free, you have to give him gifts. Right? How much you have to give him? Buchra. Buchra is when you redeem your firstborn. Bukhar, you do it for 5 slayim. When you send away your Eved Ivri, when you Jewish servant goes free after 7 years, or by the Yovel, you have to give him a gift, at least the amount of 5 slayim, the amount you would give to you use to redeem a Bukhar. So these words, although it is a beautiful mnemonic, but we saw there's so much depth in this just right now from Chaim Sofer and the Levush. Continue the Gemara. Amar Abaya. Abaya said that Batsedes on Shavuos, what do you learn in the Torah? Shiva Shavuos. Tisperlach. You read from Parshas Kollel Bechar and Parshas Re'eh, the same Torah reading you read on the last day of Pesach, and then you read in Shemini Atzeres, Kollel Bechar, which mentions, in short, all of the Yom Tovim, all the holidays. Maftirin bechabakuk, and the Torah is in Chabakuk, which is Elokah miteiman yavo. God comes from Teiman. Where's Teiman?
Yemen.
Yemen, exactly, the Yemenites.
And Yemen is very, very south, and so that's how come we say she Yemen, the Teiman.
Yamin Hashem Romema.
Exactly, the south.
I mean, Yamin Hashem, Hashem's right hand, Romema will lift us up. Acher Meimrim, other opinions say, which is usually Acher, which is Lusha ben Avoya, they say, B'chodesh Hashlishi, you read the story of Matan Torah. Because that's what happened on Shavuos, right? It was Shavuos, my father was a Vacher, he went to Panama, America Shlichus, went to a Jewish school, and the Jewish school spoke about Sukkot is a harvest season, Pesach, Shavuos is the planting season, or it's the reaping season. And he says, Shavuos, the time he gave the Torah, right? So you have to read about giving of a Torah, not just the korbanos that you bring on Shavuos. And the maftir is the Merkava, not the Merkava tank in Israel. The Merkava is the chariot of Hashem, which is in Yecheskel. There's 2 Merkavas, Yecheskel and Yeshaya. Yeshaya is actually more detailed than Yecheskel. Yecheskel said was like a peasant who saw the king, and Yeshaya was like Yecheskel was in Eretz, he was in Bavel, he was in Shushan, right? Nahar Ulai. Or in Har Kabar. He was in Shushan when he got this vision of the chariot of Hashem, the highest revelation that a Navi has got. I mean, during the time of the leaving of Egypt, and Matan Torah was much more. So you do the Haftarah of Yecheskel, which in 2 ways it's connected to Shavuos. First of all, the Malachim, the angels, and the hosts, the heavenly hosts, which are spoken about, are also mentioned in Tehillim, that we had this by the Matan Torah. By Harsina, we had Sina B'Kodesh. Everybody heard Anochi L'Yeh Lecha. So this is the greatest revelation that ever took place in history so far, was by the giving of a Torah, where every Jew saw the Hashem himself by the first 2 commandments. And Yecheskel was the highest revelation that a Jewish person has got since then. And as well, it also took place on Shavuos. So that's why we do Yecheskel, not Yeshaya, because although Yeshaya was, if you could say, his visions were greater than Yecheskel of the Merkava, but we do the Haftarah of Yecheskel because that took place on Shavuos. On Shabbos Parshas Yisroi, then we do the Haftarah of the Merkava of Yeshaya, because that's when we read it in the Torah. And there's even hints, and there's a whole fascinating thing, how they fit into the words. It says in the Torah, on the fourth, on the fifth day of the month. How exactly that fits in with Shavuos? Some say it's the fourth day of the week, Wednesday. Some say it was the fourth king, Tzidkiyahu, from when Babel came. But to figure out how to fit into the words, that this vision of Yecheskel took place on Shavuos. The Idna, and nowadays, the Ikatre Yomi, we got 2 days of Shavuos. Avdin and Katavayu, we do both. We read both of them. We don't have a problem. We can read both of these. And you switch it around. Why do we switch it around? Because the Torah, we don't know what day of the month the Torah was given. Correct? We know it was given on Shabbos. Was the Torah given on the 6th of Shavuot of Sivan and the 7th of Sivan? And Shavuos is 50 days after the second day of Pesach.
Is there like a socket to who we go according to?
This is how halacha is. This is what we do. We do the opposite. We go according to Abaya, right? We have this order in reading. We go according. We switch it around. We do Chodesh HaShlishi on the first day of Parshas Yisroi, where everyone stands. 10 Commandments. Everybody comes to shul that day. That's the first day of Shavuos, because it speaks about Matan Torah, and Vav Sivan is the day the Torah was given. Very simple, right? Rashi. And the other parsha you can read on the second day, which is more the halachas of Shavuos. Most times, even back then, Pesach Shavuos would come out to be on Vav Sivan. So you do b'chodesh hashlishi because that's most years it comes out like that. Continues the Gemara. B'Rosh Hashanah, on Rosh Hashanah, what do you read? B'chodesh hashvi, in the 7th month. On Echel HaChodesh Shabbos Yom Teruah, should be a day of Teruah. Maftir and Haftarah is Ben Yakar li Ephraim. My son Ephraim, you're so precious, telling you, Zachar Skarenu, you always remember, constantly remembering them over and over. And that's the Torah reading that we read. Rachim and Rachamenu, Hashem will always have Rachmanis on us. In order to mention the Rachmanis, the mercy that Hashem should always have on us. Some say, Hashem Pakar Sarah. Hashem remembered Sarah. Right, because this is the birthday of Yitzchak, was born on Rosh Hashanah, and Hashem remembered Sarah. He should remember us as well. Maftirin b'chana, and the Haftarah is on in Shmuel, which we learn the story of Chana and the prophecy, because Chana also Shmuel was born also on Rosh Hashanah. So Chana and Sarah were both remembered on Rosh Hashanah to have children. So this is what we read on those days. The Inna Dikatriyam. Nowadays, even in Israel, we do 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Obviously, because the reason is, if it's that day is Rosh Chodesh, you can't send out messengers. No way to get the word out. It's Yom Tov. So even in Eretz Yisrael, he used to do 2 days of Rosh Hashanah as it's Rosh Chodesh, and therefore, there was, as in Mesechta Rosh Hashanah, it says it was one time a mistake, exactly what type of a Shiur they should say. So Rosh Hashanah is always 2 days, even in Eretz Yisrael. And since you have 2 days, so therefore, we keep this custom. And of course, according to Chassidus and Kabbalah, the holiness of Rosh Hashanah is first day and second day is very unique. And because of that, we could do both Torah readings and both Haftarahs. So Yom HaKaima l'Kirish Omrim u'Lamachav l'Kim Nisas Avram. The first day we read we read that Hashem remembered Sarah, and Haftarah is Chana, remembering. The next day we read and Hashem tested Avraham, Parshas Vayera, and the Haftarah is Aban Yakar Li Ephraim. And this last Torah reading we do on as Maftir, and we mentioned Akedas Yitzchak because Hashem should remember the schus, the merit of Yitzchak, which also Akedas Yitzchak took place on the day of Rosh Hashanah. So we mentioned that as well. Again, so the halacha, this last thing in the Gemara is what we do. What we read on the first day, the second day. Right, the first day we read Hashem Pakad Asara. The second day of Rosh Hashanah we read the Akedas Yitzchak. And of course, before Rosh Hashanah, we always read the Teichacha. We read all the curses, or the opposite of blessings. We read that before Rosh Hashanah in order it should be Tichla Shana Klal. The year of curses should come to an end. Sorry if I'm going a little fast. B'Yom Kippurim on Yom Kippur. What do you read? Yom Kippur is one day. It's only Yom Tiv. That everywhere in the world is just one day.
Exactly. So you read this first, actually.
Per Acharemos, you read the order of the Acharemos Shnei Bnei Aaron. This is what Aaron has to do, what a Kohen Gadol has to do on Yom Kippur. That is a Torah reading of Shacharis of Yom Kippur. Umaftirin, and the Haftarah is Kichoy Amar Ram V'Nisa. Thus says Hashem, the great and lofty one, which deals with fasting and doing teshuvah. It says, Solu panu darech michshol miderech ami. It was very interesting. In 770, the Rebbe would always receive maftir every single Shabbos, haftarah. Now on Yom Kippur, the Rebbe would not receive maftir by Shacharis, because by Mincha, the Rebbe would receive maftir and haftarah, because by Mincha is maftir yoina. By Shacharis, the Rebbe would not receive haftarah. It was, I think, the only haftarah of the year where the Rebbe would not lay in the haftarah. I don't know. Yom Kippur morning was only haftarah of the year in 770, where the Rebbe would not be the one to do the haftarah. All the other weeks, all the other kriyas, the Rebbe would read the haftarah. Right? Besides for Tisha B'Av, Yom Kippur is the only time we have haftarah by Shacharis and by Mincha. So Rabbi Chadakov, the Rebbe's chief secretary, he was the one who always received haftarah of Shacharis, and he came from Latvia. He had a very unique accent, and everyone remembers it always Solu. Now everyone in 770, especially the yeshiva boys of Bachrim, they would push to get as close to the Rebbe as possible. And there was davening, doing haftarah. They want to be as close, to be near the Rebbe. And they know the Rebbe is getting haftarah. It will be tremendous pushing to get as close as possible to the bima, to be near the Rebbe. And everyone who was in 770 could tell you, however much they describe the pushing, is just an understatement. And this is one time a year that the American Bachrim would always sort of like enjoy this show, enjoy the scene. We have all the guests who would come for Tishrei, mainly the Israeli Bachrim, Israeli yeshiva students, and they would always push to get close for Maftir, to get close to the Bima. And then Rabbi Chadakov and Shacharis will come and get this haftarah. The haftarah is Solu. It talks about doing teshuvah, and it talks about Yom Tzom Efchareyu. It's a special day, a day to fast. That's haftarah of Shacharis, and the Korean haftarah of Yom Kippur Shacharis. And by Mincha, on Yom Kippur, you remember what we learned? It's the same parsha. It's also Nacharemus. What is it?
There's Mincha time, you say.
Mincha Yom Kippur.
Oh, yeah, as far as actually the prohibitions actually that can lead to someone being a mamzer.
Exactly. All the prohibitions, who you're not allowed to marry. Uva Mincha, Kairin Ba'arayas. You read that Arayas. Arayas are the forbidden intimate relations that a person is forbidden to have. right? Their granddaughter, their mother, their this and that. It goes for all of them, man to man, man to animal, all these things which are forbidden entirely. And then you have things which are D'Rabbanan, which is not a love, but it's Ma'aser Eretz Mitzrayim. It's like woman to woman, etc. But all the a married woman, a woman who's a nida, all these prohibitions, we read it by mincha on Yom Kippur. Umaftirin b'yoina, and the maftir is maftir yoina. It speaks about the people of Nineveh, which did teshuvah, and Hashem accepted their teshuvah. What is the reason you read about this on Yom Kippur? Can you imagine Yom Kippur, such a holy day? You're not even allowed to have intimate relations on Yom Kippur. And by mincha, this is what you're going to read about? All the forbidden relations. And so Rashi brings a very good reason. And this is the reason, most common reason given, is that if a person sinned in one of these forbidden relationships and they have not yet done teshuvah, so now we're reminding him, the Torah says it's forbidden, make sure to do teshuvah mincha time before the gates close, before the day is up. Tosfos says another interesting reason. Because many women on Yom Kippur get themselves up, dress beautifully for Yom Tov. And in order that the woman should be reminded, be careful not to show off your beauty in the wrong times, the wrong places, that people shouldn't come to do a transgression with you. Now, seemingly that's if that's the case, you're worried about women getting dressed up on Yom Kippur to make people transgress. Just say you can't get dressed up on Yom Kippur. Why make it a Torah reading because of this? So a Baal Tshuva has to always go, what is a real test of someone who's a real Baal Tshuva, returning to Hashem? If they're put into the same situation that they had before, and they don't do the action they did before. If it's the same woman, or it's the same place, they had the opportunity to steal, they had the opportunity to act in a certain way, and then they went to that same place and they acted in the proper way. So it's a lot of times not so much for the woman that they shouldn't attract the men, but for the rest of the year, if a woman's adorning themselves many times, you could do it not necessarily. You could do it many times for the sake of a taiva, of a desire that they have. So in Kippur, when they get dressed, they should do it in honor of Hashem, without any side intentions in mind. So the men are commanded not to think, not to look where you're not supposed to look. And the women are to remind them to always to have the proper kavanah. So God forbid it shouldn't come to any type of avera on that day. The Medrash says another reason that we're commanded. It doesn't say not to have relations. It says the words that he used over and over is loy segala ervasam. Don't reveal, expose their ervasam, their concealed places, their nakedness. So we're asking Hashem to us. We're being careful with all these mitzvahs. He told us over and over, don't reveal this one, don't reveal this, don't expose this, don't expose that. Hashem, don't expose our nakedness. We're Aaron Ve'eria. We have so many sins, which is our nakedness. Hashem, please don't expose those either. And the last reason is we're going to connect it to Mesechta Tainis, Chaf Av, we learned we made a siyum last 9 days, last year, was that the daughters, what happened to Matzah Yom Kippur? Was the daughters of Yerushalayim would go out and dance in the fields on Matzah Yom Kippur, and they would tell the Bachar Sanai Nechad, lift up your eyes and don't look at the external beauty, look at the family, look at the actions. So Matzah Yom Kippur is the biggest, you could say, Valentine's Day of the year, right? Now they make it in Yerushalayim on Tu B'Av, but it's Matzah Yom Kippur and Chamisha B'Av.
A singles event.
Correct.
Yeah.
If you want to put it like that. It's the biggest singles event of the year, but it was obviously done in a Torah type of way. So you have to remind everyone, listen, tonight's going to be a big shidduch event going on. we have to know who you're allowed to marry, who you're not allowed to marry. It's important to know. So therefore, you're reminding everyone who you marry, just who you're allowed to marry, who you're not allowed to marry. And for this next little statement over here, we can spend the whole day of a share on this, but we'll go through it quickly. Says Rebbe, wherever you see the greatness of Hashem, you also find Hashem's humility. This concept is written in the Torah. It's repeated in the prophets, and it is also repeated a third time in the Ksuvim. Where do you see it in Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim? Like this. First in the Torah. Chasab Torah says in the Torah, Ki Hashem Elokeichem hu Elokei Elokim v'Adonai Adonim. Hashem, your God, is a God of gods and the Master of masters. Uksiv Basrei says afterwards, Oisem Mishpat Yasam v'Almana. Hashem does judgment for widows and for orphans. So Hashem doesn't just, put himself in an ivory palace. Hashem doesn't only concern himself with the kings. He's the king of kings and the greatest of all. But he does judgment for a widow and an orphan. The people have no ability to protect themselves, and Hashem does judgment for them. And the next words in the pasuk is, the oyev ger lasis lechem v'simla. And he loves the strangers and the converts to give them food. So we see that Hashem also is not just great, but Hashem is also, no one is too great for Hashem. And even someone who's a complete stranger, a ger, right? Even then Hashem loves them. For sure, everyone who's not a stranger, Hashem also loves. And it's telling you the greatness of Hashem. Also, right before that, if you look at the Torah, a few psukim before this is, I guess Hebrew and English, just to make it easier. Umaltem es arlas levavchem. Circumcise the foreskin of your heart. Don't be stiff-necked any longer. Take away any hatred, animosity you have to somebody else. And then Hashem does the same. For Hashem also is great, and he does justice for the fatherless, the widow, the foreigners, to give them food and clothing. And you should love the foreigners as well, because you were all converts when it came to Mitzrayim. To tell you that because you remove your own animosity to somebody else, Hashem will be kind to you as well. The words Gevura and Gedula, greatness, and Gevura and strength, these are sort of interchangeable over here. And Marsha and the Yehuda both have an explanation to say how exactly they're interchangeable. Continue in the Gemara. Where do you see this in Nevi'im and the prophets? Shonei ben Nevi'im, in Nevi'im, it was repeated, this idea that Hashem is so great and Hashem is humble. Simultaneously, it says, so says God, the greatest of gods. Just bring it over there. Thus says Hashem, high and lofty one, inhabits eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in the high and holy places. Hashem is holy, he's great. And I dwell in a place which is humble and broken-spirited, to revive the heart of those who are humble. So Hashem says, I am specifically together with a humble person, not one who is arrogant. We've had earlier in the Gemara, saying one is daka, nidaka, explaining this pasuk a little earlier in this Mesechta. So we see clearly that Hashem says that he is together with those who are humble. And in Tehillim, we have the same exact thing as it says. Soilu l'rechiv, kapil samaches, soilu by l'rechiv by ravas b'kashamoi v'ilzu l'fanav. Sing to Hashem, praises to His name, extol Him. L'rechiv by ravas, who's riding Aravis is like the supernal heavens, the highest heavens. Kashamoi v'ilzu l'fanav, exalt in front of Him. What's the next pasuk? Avi Yisayimim v'dayin almanos. Hashem is the father of a orphan and a judge of the widows. I mean, anyone who mistreats a widow, Hashem judges them. Elokim b'in kachay, in His Hashem in His holy habitation. So Hashem, with all of His greatness, and of course Hashem's greatness we can never completely fathom. Hashem lowered Himself to the lowers Himself. Hashem deals with those people, with those who other people don't want to necessarily deal with or overlook, or are easy to be victims. And it's called moitze. Moitze means you find it, not necessarily when you expect it. You would think, many other religions and people never learn Torah think Hashem is so great, He cares what I do. He cares if I actually bought it with a triangle K or an OK or something like that. And of course, Hashem does. Hashem deals with the lowest of the low. And this is the greatness of Hashem. And therefore, we bring a proof from all these places to show the humility of Hashem in the greatest way possible. The Shalah says, when you realize this, you think Hashem is so great. Brings you to an ava, a love of Hashem. Look, and Tanya brings this out in a full length. You can just read it and think Hashem, the greatest of the great, the greatest king of the king, and He lowers Himself to me, the lowest of the low, and cares about me. For sure, you should love Him, right? If a beggar in the gutter is raised up by a king in the greatest loving way possible, He'll love the king unconditionally. For sure, us, Hashem did much, much greater for us and took us out of Mitzrayim. And Hashem, Itidak, Hashem lives with those who are humble, with every single Jew. Hashem lives with them. And if you add up every single letter of Hashem's name, look at this. Yud, the first letter is, and then next letters is Vav Daled. What did Vav Daled add up to?
Okay, so you have already
Vav Daled is 10, exactly. Is it greater? No. It's going to be 20. Hey, right? Hey is Hey Yud. You're going to get 15. Vav is Vav Yud Vav. I'm talking about the highest type of spelling. You're going to get 22. Okay? So Yud K Vav are the only letters in the Aleph base which are not going to, if you add up the gematria of all the letters, meaning if you spell out the letters, you're not going to get a high number. Every other letter in Aleph base, you go Aleph, Beis, Gimel, go through every single one, you'll get a very high number.
Every other letter.
In Aleph base, if you add it up, let's go through Aleph. Aleph is Aleph, Lam, and Pei. Lam and Pei is 80 and 30. You're going to get 110, 111. All the other numbers, you're going to get a lot. More than the Aleph base. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, when he asked Hashem, Hashem, show me your greatness, Hashem showed him, he says he was an Anav. Yodcha chazaka, Hashem, he said, you began to show me your strong hand is gematria of the word katan. The greatness of Hashem is that even in the letters of His name, it's anava. It is very humble, it is very low. You know where this comes from? Galamukas. And on these particular, the Baal Shem Tov explains on this. On Friday we say Hashem Melech Geos Lavish. Hashem is great, a king. Geos, with greatness, Lavish is His garment. Meaning only the outer garment is a greatness. But to praise Hashem that He's great is only the outerness, the most external part of Hashem. You're never going to get to the essence of Hashem. Sort of saying Rebbe is great because he could do miracles. Really? You know? I love the United States of America because I love Pittsburgh because I could run through a red light and the cop wouldn't stop me. I mean, that's the only great thing to love about it. What about the city, the people, etc., and everything else they got? So the greatness of Hashem is Hashem al Geos. It's only a completely external thing. If you look at the Mizbeach in the Beis Hamikdash, it says Mizbach Adama, Hashem says. You have to make a Mizbeach made out of earth. Right? You're not allowed to have any trees, things that grow high. Mizbeach has to be the lowliest thing, earth. Hashem wants to be served in a way that it's humble. Look at the Aron, which was pure gold. What's the inside? Wood. Right, the Aron, the box, right? Where the luchas were, inside was wood, right? Hashem wants that everything, that you're not allowed to plant an Asherah. Asherah means a tall tree, beautiful tree for idols. That's anything tall and great is not where Hashem is going to dwell. Now, for the Zara, idol worship, where you don't have anything, if you're not really great, you have to show how great you are. But if you really are great, there's absolutely no need. Somebody, when I was in Eretz Yisrael, he said that if you go through, he was like one of the heads of the yeshiva there, says that you go through the Israeli army, he says the unit which has the most infractions of not following discipline, you're not there exactly in the right moment, or your hat's out of shape, and not at the right side, your uniform is dirty and wrinkled, is Sayeret Matkal, meaning the most elite commando unit. Right? One who's the greatest doesn't have to prove how great they are. One who's not great, then they have to try showing how great they are. So on this particular thing, you have Ishbster Rebbe, you have Divrei Yoel, you have tremendous amounts of biurim just on this particular saying what is Hashem is great. Wherever you see his greatness, so you'll see his humility. And I'm going to, I guess, pause the Gemara here. What Hashem? We have on this Amud, we have half of Lamed Aleph. Lamed Aleph and Beis is another 4 Amud on Beis. We have about 1 1/4 blot left. Time flies by. Maybe tomorrow we'll have to start exactly 11 o'clock, and then we'll be able hopefully to get even more. We're up to Yom Tov Rishon Shachag, the first day of Sukkot. We're going to the Beis Habchirah. Today is July 31st. And I was planning on getting all the way up to the middle of the next Amud today, where it talks about the Torah reading of Tisha B'Av. Because on Tisha B'Av, they say many calamities occurred, but they say one of the calamities that occurred was a Spanish expulsion, which took place on this day, where Jews were expelled from Spain, and just a few years later from Portugal, the entire Iberian Peninsula. Took place on Tisha B'Av. So it actually took place on Zayin Av.
The Jews were expelled from England on Tisha B'Av, and also the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand.
World War I started on Tisha B'Av, exactly. Yeah. Right, Tisha B'Av is a day for lots of. Today's July 31st. Is a document. I must have closed that tab already. Document which had the date over there, signed by Isabella and Ferdinand. You were saying Torquemada was possibly Jewish.
Yeah, on his mother's side. Well, as well as his father's side, his father had some Jewish ancestry. Actually, going back to the Torquemada family, I think more of a direct line on his mother's side.
If you could imagine to yourself, the Jews were in Spain for at least 700-800 years at that point, established, and they're already there earlier from times of the Goyim, so probably close to 1,000 years in Spain, and they're all expelled from Spain just like that. And the Spanish Inquisition was, and it was wasn't for the sake of the Jews, it was for the sake of the conversos. They said the Jews who converted to Christianity, if they're around other Jews, they're not going to be loyal. Kick out all the other Jews, so the conversos will be loyal. That was the rationale of the entire expulsion from Spain. And so that took place on the date of July 31st, which is Zayin of that year. Just wanted to bring that up. And I just wanted to bring that up when we get to the part of Tisha B'Av, but we'll get to that hopefully tomorrow. In the meantime, we will do shiur number 5, class number 5, on the structure of the Beis Hamikdash.
Welcome to the 5th class on the structure and details of the second Beis Hamikdash. In this class, we're going to learn about the Ezras Yisrael. So for starters, the Ezras Yisrael was 135 amos by 11 amos, which is around 212 feet by 17 feet. So we'll begin with a visual representation of this. So it comes out to be just about from Eastern Parkway to Union, and it's almost the entire sidewalk. The sidewalk is actually closer to 18 feet, but it's pretty much the entire sidewalk from Eastern Parkway until Union. Let's just see that from another perspective. So we see over here, it's from Eastern Parkway until Union, and it's pretty much the entire sidewalk. So this was the size, around the size of the Ezras Yisrael. Now, the Ezras Yisrael had a number of things in it. There were 3
Everyone,
lishachos
have a good day.
Thank you, Yossi.
on the north, which are 3 types of rooms, 3 sort of rooms, 3 lishachos in the south, and then there was a lishka on one side of the door going into the Azara, which opens first into the Ezras Yisrael, and another lishka on the other side of the door. So let's go through these different lishachos. So to the north there were 3 lishachos. They were the lishkas agazis for the Sanhedrin Gdela. It says that part of it was in Kodesh and part in Chil, which apparently means that part of it was inside the Ezras Yisrael, but part of it was outside of it, and that way they were able to sit. And this was a Sanhedrin of 71 judges. Then there was the Lishkas HaGoyla. It had a pit where they would draw water from it, and they would use that water for anything that they would need in the Azara. And there was the Lishkas HaEitz, which was a place for the Kohen Gadol. That's where the Kohen Gadol would be during the 7 days before Yom Kippur. And then there were 3 lishachos to the south. So there was the Lishkas HaMelach. That was for the salt for the karbanos. There was a Lishkas HaParva where they salted the skins. And on top of the Lishkas HaParva, there was a mikvah on its roof. And then there was the Lishkas HaMedichin, which was a place to rinse the innards of the kachim before burning them on the mizbeach. So it was for the karbanos ayla, which were burnt on the mizbeach. And then we have these other 2 lishachas. There was Lishkas Pinchas HaMalbish, where the clothing of the Kehanim were stored, and there was the Lishkas Eise Chavitin, where the Minchas Chavitin would be made. Now the Kohen Gadol would be makriv the Minchas Chavitin each day, or a Minchas Chavitin, half in the morning and half in the evening. And then finally, one more thing we're going to include in this class is that around the entire Azara, there was a sort of a awning. Now this is not proportional because it doesn't say what the size is. Everything else up to this point is proportional and scaled. And we mentioned in a previous class how the Kehanim would come in through a smaller door in the Beis HaMikdash to inspect the Azara in the morning. So it says that 2 Kehanim would come in and they would go around the sides of the Azara to inspect it, and then they would meet at the Lishkas Eise Chavitin and they would confirm that everything was okay, and then they would go together back to the Beis HaMikdash, and then they would open the bigger door, and the Kehanim would pour into the Azara, and they would begin the Aveda of the day. And with that, we'll end the class.